And why are we here? In a very simple sentence, Thomas Jefferson said that the cornerstone of democracy lies in an educated electorate. And that's why we're here today, is to get an educated electorate. Another thing Mark Twain said, he puts it a little bit differently. He said, if you don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed, and if you do read the newspaper, you're misinformed. Okay? And just think about what Mark Twain would say with the internet, because we got such a means of communication today that we got so much stuff out there you got to sort through and winnow through. We think the best way to do that is face to face, and that's why we're here today. Very much my honor to introduce Congressman Gus Bilirakis, and due to the redistricting, I believe it's 12 now. 12. District 12. So we switched from District 9 to District 12, and Congressman Gus Bilirakis.
Thank you. But thank you, Jerry, and I just want to tell you a little bit about what's going on in D.C. and in the House of Representatives. We passed 32 bills in the House to create a better business environment. That's all we can do. As you know, you have to run your own business. Jerry says that as well. The government doesn't create jobs. And I was very offended. I know this is a bipartisan group, a nonpartisan group, what have you, but I was very, very offended by the president's statements that you didn't build it. I know what my grandparents went through, working 7 days a week. They had a bakery in Tarpon Springs, and they were immigrants, and they worked to make a better life for their children and their grandchildren. I know what my dad went through, working 48 hours a week at the University of Pittsburgh, and being the president of the student body. And I know what he did for us, and I know you know what you did for what you're doing for your children, and what your parents did for you. So I'm very, very offended by that. And who built the roads? We built the roads, for crying out loud. We built the roads. We're the taxpayers, and so I'm very, very offended by that. But we have to create a better business environment for you, ladies and gentlemen. And these 32 bills have done this. We've tried to increase energy production. What's wrong with the Keystone Pipeline? What's wrong with this domestic energy exploration? Whether it's, of course, we have to talk about limits. We have to talk about within reason. We have to talk about safety when it comes to the Gulf of Mexico. But what's wrong with? We do have to drill in the Gulf of Mexico within reason. What's wrong with ANWR? I went there and saw it for myself. There's no reason why we shouldn't be online there. Domestic production, for crying out loud. Stop depending on these foreign countries that don't even like us in most cases. Again, repeal some of these unnecessary regulations, and I believe we should repeal the Obamacare. The business mandates are very, very offensive. I know that you have small businesses. Businesses create, small businesses in particular, 70% of the jobs here in the United States. We should not be imposing these mandates. I personally feel that small businesses should not have a business mandate. You should not have to purchase health insurance for your employees. I think that you do it out of the goodness of your heart. I think you do it to get a better employee. So, in other words, you're in a better position to hire a good quality employee, but you shouldn't have to pay. Now, under the Obamacare, it's if you have 50 employees. So it's an incentive not to have 50 employees. This is America. This is the United States of America, ladies and gentlemen. We're supposed to grow. We're supposed to innovate, and that's how we expand and create jobs. So I think we should repeal Obamacare. There are some provisions in the bill, the pre-existing conditions. There are things that we can agree on, a consensus bill. I don't like Rahm Emanuel, but I like the advice he gave the president and Nancy Pelosi. Let's get a consensus bill on the floor, like my father did in the early 90s. Let's get a consensus bill on the floor that everybody agrees on. Instead of saying that we'll basically read the bill, we'll find out what's in it after we pass it. So I believe we need to repeal Obamacare and replace it with common sense solutions, free market solutions. We need to do something, of course, about this national debt. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a $16 trillion national debt. Okay, in 10 years, we'll be paying at least, at the minimum, $1 trillion a year on the interest alone. You know what we can do with that money? We can use that money to help our true American heroes, our wounded warriors. So thank you very, very much for having me here. It's an honor and a privilege to represent you. And if we're fortunate enough to get reelected, I'll be representing Oldsmar again with the redistricting. So thank you very much, and God bless you.
So speaking about manufacturers, I'm going to introduce Senator Jack Latvala, who is a manufacturer, and he's a member of our association as well as our representative here, and does a lot of things besides that. Jack?
I'm sure that Jerry did not intend to make that stereotype on manufacturers right before he introduced me as a manufacturer. But, you know, if the shoe fits, I guess. It's wonderful to be here with you today. We all know that there is a veteran's preference in government contracting for veteran-owned businesses. But I didn't know that the only veteran-owned businesses that previously applied to before July 1st of this year was disabled veterans. And, you know, when I look at the unemployment rate from the people that are coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan, in some age brackets, it's as high as 28%. I thought that we needed to do something about that. So this year, working in conjunction with Representative Nair, we passed a bill that provided that all combat veterans who start businesses, when those businesses are trying to do work with the state government in Florida, they all get the preference, not just disabled veterans. So that hopefully that's just one other small thing to try to produce some jobs. The other thing we worked on was consolidating government. All of us politicians always talk about, you know, cutting taxes, and the way we're going to cut taxes, we're going to try to reduce waste and get the savings out of that. We actually had a couple of real-time examples that we worked on the last 2 years. One is right here in Pinellas County. Previously in Pinellas County, we had something called the Pinellas Planning Commission, which is the PPC. And we also had a group called the MPO, which is a Metropolitan Planning Organization. One of them did planning for projects. The other one did planning for transportation. Your delegation got involved in working in conjunction with the county commission, and we passed a bill this year that eliminates that planning commission, merges the functions together, and will save several $100,000s a year for the taxpayers here in Pinellas County just by eliminating a unit of government. And most of us could probably count on one hand how many units of government we know of that have ever been eliminated. You see new units of government, but you don't ever see any that are eliminated. Always be there for you if you need any help. Thank you very much.
Now we have Senator Rhonda Storms, who will be leaving the Senate this year and running for county appraiser. So we're very, very happy to have you with us, Rhonda.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I really came here to have one last opportunity to work with Senator Latvala again. And so he almost fell off his chair when he saw me walk in. Thank you very much for being here. I'm so glad to be here, and I'm not going to be in the Senate again as of November, the election. But I didn't want to miss the opportunity to continue to advance the issues that I've worked on as a senator, and to ask the members that are here to pay careful attention to the issues that have been near and dear to my heart, and I think are near and dear to your heart. I've worked as a state senator very closely on child welfare issues, and I'm a fiscal conservative, but I'm also a social conservative. And so what I'd like to lay down for you today is a rationale for why those issues are inextricably intertwined. Here's my gauntlet to you. You may be saying, all this social issue stuff about family, that's really nice, but we're not working. Remember what I said, we don't have jobs. My business is crashing. I'm doing everything I can to keep the nose of the plane up. Well, I'm going to say to you, the first thing you do, remember, is to stop the hemorrhaging. How much better would it be if we had families that cared for their kids? They wouldn't be in the system. If we cared about moms and dads staying married, or mothers having babies, not 8 and 12 babies outside of wedlock, and one baby with different fathers. I mean, we've got people in Hillsborough County that have 12 kids from 12 different men, and they're all in the system. If you want to say to me it doesn't matter, those social issues don't matter, then I would say to you, what would have happened to the Sandusky case if all of those little boys didn't need a father in their life? What would have happened? What would happen in Pinellas County when you have a 70% dropout rate for African American males? What would happen to the money that you could spend on things if your kids were graduating from high school in Pinellas County? So if you say to me it doesn't matter about social issues, then I would say to you, look at where you're hemorrhaging your money. You are hemorrhaging your money on social programs, on jails, on prison systems, on drug and alcohol abuse. Talk to me about a revival in this country. Talk to me about changing the morals in this country, and I will say, then you will be talking to me about changing the economic situation in this country. They both matter, and so that's my case to you.
I was first elected 2 years ago. I was subsequently re-elected a couple months ago due to no opposition, and so that is obviously the most enjoyable way to campaign and the least stress. But I wanted to real quick update you on just a couple things that happened in the legislative session this past year that are pertinent, I think, to the state of Florida as a whole, but one that is particularly pertinent to this area. And the first was legislation that I filed dealing with deregulation, another deregulation package this year. It was aimed on getting people back to work. One of the primary components of it was waiving veterans licensing fees for veterans who come back from service and want to begin working and who need licensing through a state agency. Another component of it was looking at continuing education, to say that in the state of Florida, before this past year and before we were able to pass the legislation, if I missed 1 year of continuing education and then I missed another year of continuing education, perhaps 5 years, maybe I'm a working mom who comes home to have children and doesn't keep up with her continuing education as she's raising a family and wants to get back to work. Old Florida law said that for every year she missed, she had to take 1 year of continuing education. The problem was the continuing education is the same every single year, and so she was taking the equivalent of 10 years of the exact same course in order to go back to work. The second example I'll give you of legislation that was passed this year that got quite a bit of notoriety and maybe a little bit of misinformation thanks to our friends at the Orlando Sentinel, but that was the Communication Services Tax Reform. It's different. And I think we see it in voters, and I think the last thing I would leave you with is, to those of you who are running for office in this room, I commend you. Because the stuff that's getting put in my mailbox, the stuff I'm being told about people willing to put their name out there to run for office is offensive. And so when we have an opportunity as elected officials, and we have an opportunity as people who are involved in the process to say, look, I get that you're a donkey and I'm an elephant, you have a D behind your name, I have an R behind my name, whatever that difference may be, we can still work together at the end of the day to agree on common principles that the taxpayer shouldn't be paying any more than Florida law requires them to pay. And so I appreciate all of y'all giving us the opportunity to come out today. I will tell you that the stakes are high, and you heard Congressman Bilirakis talk about the federal deficit. It's just as important for us to be efficient with our state budget. When you look at Florida being the third largest donor state in the country and the 47th per capita recipient of federal tax dollars, we are absolutely propping up other states. And it is fundamentally a premise and fundamentally important that we are efficient with our state budget. So with that, I thank y'all for coming out, and I thank y'all for staying engaged in the process. And I'll be around if you have any questions or comments after.
Now we got Peter near, and I will tell you, Peter, you remain in my district, so I just live right across the street here. But Peter?
Thank you very much. It's good to be back here again. This is probably my 6th time that we're here. We're having a great time. Jerry invites me all the time. Getting back to a little bit about the legislature, it was a fantastic year. You know, this was all about redistricting, and I spent almost the entire summer traveling with the redistricting committee, going all over the state of Florida, you know, listening to people about how they wanted the districts to be done. I was lucky enough to be co-chairman of the Senate Redistricting Committee, and that worked out really, really well. And when I finally got back and we finally figured out what the districting was in this area, I was sad and unfortunate that I learned that I was going to lose Oldsmar, and I was going to lose the entire east side of McMullen Booth Road, East Lake Road. But I did gain the entire city of Dunedin, so that's a whole brand new effort for me. And with that, of course, comes new challenges. Now I've got all waterfront, and of course that presents all brand new issues that I've got to get very familiar with. We're talking about beach renourishment. You've been reading a lot about that in the newspaper, about beach renourishment, and also about citizens insurance. And that's what I want to touch on very quickly right now, because in my district right now, I have approximately 30,000 homeowners who are on citizens insurance. I took time and effort. I went all the way down about a month and a half ago down to Miami, where they actually were doing a citizens roundtable to make sure I fully understood that. And citizens were there trying to tell everybody, well, you know, you have a choice. You have a choice. You can do this. If you don't like it, you don't have a choice. If you live in these areas in Pinellas County, there is no choice. It's citizens or nothing. And then on top of that, I found out there's some things going on with citizens that I didn't know about that I was very unhappy with. The way that they do their inspections. You have a nail or two out of place, and all of a sudden you lose all of the benefits that you had, you know, as far as some of the things that we as the legislature try to do to reduce some of those fees. Last session, I voted against a bill called Depopulation Bill. It was supposed to be so good. It was touted as one of the best bills to reduce the amount of people who are on citizens. And yes, I want to reduce the amount of people on citizens, but not at their expense and not at their danger. The bill basically included that other companies from out of the state, from surplus line companies, were going to come in and be allowed to take people out of citizens and put them in theirs without a guarantee that if they went out of business that they would get paid for their policy. Because we in Florida have a guaranteed fund for people and companies that if companies go out of business, you still get paid as the homeowner. They were trying to make it so these businesses, if they went out of business, you would not be guaranteed. I thought that was the wrong thing to do, and I voted against that, and that worked out all right. Situations in Tallahassee are not quite as simple as they always are. Just like all of the elected officials in this room know, it's not quite as easy as people in the newspapers try to make it out to be. But I am proud to be your representative. I'm going to be your representative for another 2 years, hopefully, and everything will work out real well. And I always will work out for the business interests that you all have. Thank you very much for allowing me to be here. I know you have a lot of other things to do. Thank you. Take care.